immigration reform, of the environment, of women's and LGBTQ rights, of to end gun violence, all the things I care about as well. And I am proud of you for being the only organization on Capitol Hill that represents the values and the voice of Hindu Americans, many of which I am so proud to have in my district. So again, welcome to Washington, virtually of course, and have a wonderful, wonderful forum.
I'm Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, representing California's 19th District, and I'm a member of the House India Caucus. It's my honor to help welcome you to your 2021 Virtual Advocacy Forum. I'm sure you'll have enlightening conversations throughout the next 2 days. All of you are joining because you agree that promoting dignity and respect are of the utmost importance, and I agree with you. That promotion goes beyond words, and I appreciate your advocacy on issues like combating Hindu phobia in America and working to prevent anti-Hindu hate crimes. And as chair of the House Immigration and Citizenship Subcommittee, please know that I'm working hard to fix our country's green card backlog, which I know impacts many of your families and friends. Plus, as a member of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, like you, I have a strong interest in human rights around the world, including the right to practice one's religion free from persecution. I'm aware you have a lot to tackle in the next 2 days, so I won't take up more of your time. I thank you for including me in this forum, and I look forward to our work together in this year and for years to come.
Hi everybody, I'm Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi of the 8th District of Illinois. Thank you so much for everything that you do for the Hindu American community on Capitol Hill. Thank you for allowing me to address you virtually for your advocacy forum. I'm so glad all of you are participating in the civic affairs of your country. I am trying to do everything I can to advocate all of our interests and the interests of so many people who share our values. One of the things that I'm pursuing right now as an immigrant myself is to help clear the green card backlog. Today, more than 1.2 million people, mainly H-1B holders from India, are actually stuck in the green card backlog because of a quota system that assigns the number of green cards that each country may have. Because of that, if you are an H-1B holder from India and you were to apply today for a green card, it would take 80 years. In fact, of the 1.2 million people stuck in the backlog, at least 200,000 will die before they ever receive a green card. That is unacceptable. And so now, as an original sponsor of the EAGLE Act, which removes the per country caps, I'm also trying to incorporate that into the current reconciliation process that is happening in the budget committees of the House and the Senate. Cross your fingers and toes and wish me luck as I try to get this done. If we can do this, along with enacting immigration reform for everybody, we will finally take advantage of our greatest asset as a country, and that is a welcoming spirit toward immigrants like your families and mine. And so let's make the American dream possible for everyone. Thank you so much to HAF for pushing for this and other causes, and I look forward to being with you, hopefully in person, in the very near future. Namaste.
Thank you. Those are some wonderful messages that really will kickstart our panel discussion here. Now, before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. We will be recording and live streaming today's program, but by participating, you all as viewers agree not to record, share, or otherwise disseminate the presentation in whole or in part without the expressed written consent of the Hindu American Foundation. We will have time for a question and answer session towards the end of our program, so please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen for any questions and you can submit them at any time, and we will try our best to get to as many of them as possible. And also, please be sure to follow HAF on social media at Hindu American and tag us so we can engage with you in this discussion. And finally, please keep an eye out for important links in the chat window and engage in the conversation in the chat in a respectful manner. So now I'm going to turn it over to our panelists and introduce them individually. We have Ravi Bulusu, who is the Executive Director of Immigration Forum. We have Morad Gorban, who is the Director of Government Affairs and Policy for the Public Affairs Alliance of Iranian Americans. Working closely with the Executive Director, Morad was responsible for setting PAAIA's strategy and direction on policy initiatives and electioneering activities. From 2003 to 2008, Morad served as the Political Director of the Iranian American Political Action Committee. Prior to joining IAPAC, Morad served on the staff of U.S. Representative John Linder from 1995 to 2000, and as the Senior Constituent Service Representative, he managed and coordinated all constituent casework and was the Chief Liaison to the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the Department of State, and the Department of Defense. Morad earned his bachelor's degree in political science at Tulane University, and in June of 2020, he earned his master's degree in international studies and diplomacy at the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. Next, we have Akanksha Kalra, who is an attorney and has over 21 years of experience exclusively working in the field of immigration and nationality law. She represents corporate and individual clients in immigration matters before the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of Labor, Department of State, and U.S. consulates, Executive Office of Immigration Reform, Board of Immigration Appeals, and other federal agencies. Ms. Kalra has significant personal ties to the immigration experience. She was born in India and immigrated to the United States in 1992. She is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania Law School, where she received her LLM degree in international law. Prior to coming to the U.S., Ms. Kalra obtained her LLB degree with top honors from Law Faculty, University of Delhi. She graduated at the top of her class with BA honors from Punjab University, India, and Ms. Kalra is admitted to the New York Bar and the United States Court of Appeals for the 3rd District. And I am your host and moderator for today, as I said, HAF's Director of Government Relations and Policy. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I am going to start with Ms. Kalra to present her opening remarks.
Thank you, Tanya. I hope I did not say your name incorrectly, and pardon me if I did. Namaste, everybody. Good afternoon. It is afternoon where I am in Philadelphia. I have been, as Tanya mentioned, my main area of my practice is employment and family-based immigration. So I'm going to be talking mainly about those areas. Let's start with 2020. 2020 was a momentous year. It was also an unprecedented one for US immigration. The COVID-19 related travel restrictions, the ballooning backlog of processing delays for visa applications, both here and at the US embassies and consulates worldwide, the previous administration's focus and last-minute efforts on reducing legal immigration, both employment and family-based, and the legal battles against those restrictive policies and guidelines, the unprecedented number of migrants at the border. I mean, I could go on. Many other issues continue to adversely impact our immigration system, which already had and has many flaws. And those of us who work within it know all too well that it is a complex, outdated system that has not been updated in decades. What we also know is that the immigration policies do become susceptible to the shifting winds of each administration. The bickering and political debate about immigration reform is never ending, yet we fail to bring our immigration system into this century. The media and our politicians mostly focus on issues related to the undocumented immigrants. Meanwhile, the problems in the legal immigration system pertaining to employment and family-based immigration are generally missing in immigration-related discussions. One of the congressmen whose remarks you just played, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, was referring to the the budget reconciliation bill. and the immigration reform measures that were included in it. I think the recording must have happened, more than 2 days ago, but let's start right there. So the big immigration-related news yesterday was about the Senate parliamentarian. I just learned who a Senate parliamentarian was. I didn't even know that before. It was issued on September 19th, which was, the ruling was against the massive immigration reform effort, which was included in the Democrats' budget reconciliation bill. This has been a setback for many immigrants from India who are stuck in the decades-long green card backlog. I'll give you an example of how the news media covers it. Here's a headline from NPR yesterday. This is, and I read from it. In a blow to Democrats, Senate official blocks immigration reform in budget bill. And here's a headline from yesterday's Times of India, which is a major newspaper in India. US immigration reforms, setback for Indians looking to pay super fee for green card. Because this is a bill many Indian immigrants here in the US were pinning all of their hopes on, because this they thought would give them a way out of the backlog that they have been stuck in for years. But without getting into much of the details about what the bill, the immigration reform measures were included in that bill, I will say this: the Senate parliamentarian Elizabeth McDonough, I was reading an article about her. She is a former immigration lawyer. She used to work for the US Department of Justice as a trial attorney. So she does understand the immigration part of it. And for whatever reason, I'm not going to discuss that right now, she ruled against it. So that is kind of, some of the things that we will be talking about as we go further along in the discussion. But with that, I am going to turn it back to Taniel, and I will wait for the moderator to have the questions, and we'll address them accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. We'll go next to Murad Gorban for his opening remarks. Murad, please.
Hi, Taniel. Thank you so much for having me as part of this discussion. I'm very excited to be here and to be working with the great organization, the Hindu American Foundation. So one of the things I'm going to talk about is the Temporary Family Visitation Act. I want to give you guys sort of a background of how we came up with this legislation, the issue that our community face, and then the sort of solution that we are trying to implement. Like many Indian Americans, Iranian Americans are very well integrated into American society, have a deep footprint in US economy, but at the same time, they're very close to family that they still have in Iran. Our polling shows that around 90% of Iranian Americans indicate that they have family in Iran, and almost 50% indicate that they still have immediate family in Iran. So having the ability of family members come and visit them here for special occasions has always been a very important issue for the Iranian American community. And one of the things that we always heard back from our community members was the difficulty that they had in getting visitors visas for their family members to come and visit them here. And when we started looking into this issue, we realized that this isn't really an Iranian American issue or Iranian issue. This impacts all Americans that have relatives abroad that come from countries that aren't part of the visa waiver program. And the reason is the problem is within the INA itself. The current law lacks consideration for relatives of US citizens and permanent residents to temporarily visit family members here in the United States. Instead, family members have to go through what they call the B2 tourist visa, which is a visa designed for pleasure. And within the law, it weighs against people that have relatives in the United States because there's a presumption of immigration. So this results in an unnecessary high denial rate of family members wishing to visit the United States. A recent CRS report, Congressional Research Service, found that the most common reason for non-immigrant visa denials was the intent to immigrate or presumption of immigration. approximately 20% of applicants each year are denied visas based on that. And majority of those are people that have relatives in the United States. I think CRS indicated that between 1 to 2 million people each year are denied under this category. Eventually, many give up trying to visit their relatives in the United States and they apply for green cards. This is what CRS calls unintended immigrants. So we came up with the Temporary Family Visitation Act as a solution to this problem. The bill would amend the INA to establish a separate non-immigrant visa category for family members of US citizens and legal permanent residents. It will help facilitate family reunions while also ensuring that visits are temporary and enforceable. The legislation, bipartisan legislation, was introduced in the House by Congressman Scott Peters from California, Stephanie Bice from Oklahoma, Jim Himes from Connecticut, and Maria Salazar from Florida. A companion bill has been introduced in the Senate by Senators Rand Paul and Richard Blumenthal. Currently, we have 24 co-sponsors in the House, and we're looking forward to working with the Judiciary Committee and moving it through the legislative process. We also have 20 national and regional organizations supporting the legislation, including the Hindu American Foundation, US Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, LA Business Council, and the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce. Now I'd like to show an explainer video that gives you a little bit of details about the bill, and then looking forward to our panel discussion.
Thanks, Murad. And as he said, HAF is proud to partner with him and with all of these groups. This is a new avenue we're exploring. And to tell you a little bit more about it, I'm going to show you a quick video explaining exactly what TFVA is. Let me go back.
Every year, millions of people are denied the ability to celebrate birthdays, graduations, weddings, and more with family in the United States. Here's why. Family members of U.S. citizens and permanent residents who wish to visit loved ones have to apply for B2 visitor visas. But these visas are designed for visits of pleasure and lack consideration for family reunion. The result? Consular officers assume B2 applicants with family in the U.S. intend to immigrate, so they deny their visas. Frustrated, many families are then forced to apply for green cards just so they can see their relatives. But a solution exists. The Temporary Family Visitation Act will solve this problem by creating a new non-immigrant B3 visa category specifically for family members of U.S. citizens and permanent residents. If passed, TFVA will impact millions of applicants per year, allowing families to be reunited for life's special moments, all while stimulating the tourism sector and local economies. In 2019 alone, international travelers spent $155 billion while in the US. And in 2018, international travel spending directly supported 1.2 million US jobs. TFVA is a win for US families and our economy. Let's bring families together. Let's pass TFVA.
So I hope that gives our audience and our viewers at home a little bit more information about what TFVA is. As Murad said, it's a new piece of legislation. It was first introduced late last year in the 116th Congress and reintroduced again this year in the 117th Congress. In fact, HAF has an action alert that we can put into the chat for you, where you at home can now take action and contact your member of Congress and your senator and your senators to support and co-sponsor those bills. So please take action, and we're proud here at HAF to partner with PAAIA and so many other organizations who are working to fix our broken immigration system. And we're always exploring new avenues to do that in addition to the traditional effort to reform our immigration system. So next, I want to move over to Ravi, who is someone I've spent a lot of time on the phone with, a lot of time meeting with members of Congress with for the last 2 years. He is the executive director of Immigration Forum, another partner of the Hindu American Foundation. So Ravi, I'll turn it over to you for your opening remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you, Channel G, for the lovely introduction. To just go over a little bit of where I come from. I came here to the United States as a graduate student way back. I did my master's, and then I started working in a technology company out here in Seattle. Definitely never really thought about green card when I first came here to study. I wanted to do my master's in a very good university and then work in America in technology, primarily because America continues to be the leader when it comes to technology. And I was hoping to be able to make serious impact through technology. And I've been very fortunate, I should say, to have had the opportunity to work on technology that is used by millions of firms and probably billions of people across the world. And that opportunity has told me a lot. I learned a lot through the process. However, like most people, I've led my immigration part of the story on the sidelines, and I suffered because of that. But mine is not the most typical story. The typical story these days is that people come and they apply for a green card in one of the employment-based categories, and they have to wait. And the wait is not a few weeks or a few months. It is a few decades. Senator Mike Lee in the 116th Congress, when he was trying to push one of the bills that he was hoping would be a solution to this problem, categorically stated one fact, which continues to be the case even today, that people from certain countries, which are the most populous, if they applied for an immigration visa, the green card, in 2019 or 2020, they would have to wait an impossible 194 years. And the worst part of it is there is no solution in sight at this point. There have been multiple efforts, and multiple efforts sort of a bit of more of the same. And things have eventually become, like many other significant issues that are yet to be resolved in this country, they've become a bone of contention, and which is unfortunate. And immigrants are being, it is a pie that continues to be of the same size, and people are primarily competing for the same slice of the pie. And this is all unfortunate. And this has significant consequences. The typical story that I came here either on a family visa or an education-based visa, and then I moved on to graduate school, and I then got a job. My employer sponsored my H-1B and then my green card, and I have my green card. Is definitely in a few years, that is definitely not the case when it comes to Indian and Chinese immigrants. And there are also other immigrants, say from countries like Vietnam and Philippines and so on and so forth, that also run into these issues. I'm focusing only on the employment-based category. This is not to say that there are problems in the other categories. The family-based category is a significant challenge too. And to what Murad just mentioned, I can attest to the fact that my brother could not be here for the graduation party or the celebration of the birthdays, the first birthdays of my daughters, or the graduation party of my wife or mine. I know exactly what he's talking about. And the fact of the matter is, these are not two sides of the same coin. These are not two different problems. They are the same problem. In some cases, it is little joys of life that mean a lot. In other cases, it is shattered dreams, broken careers, and no light at the end of the tunnel. The core problem is the immigration code hasn't changed in decades. The last time a major change has happened was in 1990. And ironically, that change is what has actually resulted in a situation where people who enter into the country, some of the assumptions in the change or the lack of some of the things that were probably not foreseen when that change was made, is as a consequence of that, people who come on an employment-based, who try to immigrate based on, in the employment category, are not getting their green cards, and they will not get them for the next few decades. This has consequences, serious consequences. I'm not going to take a stance as to what is, I'm not going to put anything on a moral scale. It is not my job. I'm not going to put anything on a legal scale. It is not my job. There are mechanisms and there are processes that will help take care of that, and we defer to that. What I'm here to do is to highlight the plight and the consequences of this broken immigration system, and the title is very apt. These are these are dreams that are interrupted. So some of the things are people who are stuck in their H-1B cannot move jobs. Now, it might look glossy from the outside, but the challenges when you can move job are manifold. And there are, I'm not just pleading from an employee or an individual's perspective. I'm also going to I'm going to show you some data that show how detrimental it is to the United States, a country we, after having lived here for so long, have come to love very dearly. As people would say, this is our karma bhumi, and we take that very seriously. And I myself have a lot of love for the country. On the one side, an individual on an employment-based green card application can move jobs, and for as long as they're stuck in the backlog, they can't be entrepreneurial either. Some of the very original research that Immigration Forum, the organization that I work with very closely on these matters, I actually help strategize, I help run multiple campaigns and such. Some of the data we dug, it shows us that the Indian and Chinese immigrants who are very entrepreneurial have contributed over $650 billion in net new market valuation through companies that they started. And I'm not talking about any mom and pop shops. I'm not talking about any services-based industry. I'm talking about actual industries, actual companies in the industries of pharmaceuticals, technology, hardware or software, and medicine, and so on and so forth. And they have created net new jobs. On an annual basis, the net impact by these two groups alone is to the tune of $22 billion per year. However, not a single Indian immigrant, there is one case, and that's an outlier, one case. Not a single Indian immigrant who has arrived in the country after 2007 has been able to start a company. Did the entrepreneur and the Indians suddenly disappear? It is not the case. All of these dreams are stifled, and there is a net loss to the economy and also to the individual. It is not just the money or the material part of it. There is actual suffering too, though it might not necessarily look like that. For instance, spouses of individuals who are the primary applicants, if the primary applicant dies, they lose their status, they have to pack their bags within 2 weeks and leave the country. Talk about a double whammy. talk about events that so significantly change in one fell swoop the entire direction that your life could have been. And the children, they're not spared either. And two, children, because of these long waits, who are stuck in these backlogs, they cannot, when they're over 21, they cannot be, even if their parents get their green card at 22 when they're 22 years of age, they cannot be on that application because they've aged out. And those children either have to go back to their parents' country, or their former country. This is for children who are not born here. Or they have to go back in the same H-1B line and wait for 150 years. These are significant challenges, humanly impossible challenges. It is very clear that these scenarios were not foreseen because of the significant changes that happened over the past 3 decades. And that is why immigration and the policy it needs a relook. And what we do, I mean, there are other challenges too, but I will share briefly about what we've done and what we do. We support any provision that helps clear the backlog. And in fact, given the process challenges that we are seeing over the past 3 to 5 years, which are delaying H-4 EADs and so on and so forth significantly, what we're trying to do is we're working with various members of the Congress very closely to help eliminate the backlog altogether. And we've worked with the chairman of the Judiciary Committee on either side of the aisle, on either side of the House of the Senate side. And we've put forth proposals which, because of what we've noticed over the past many years, over the decade, there is a bill that continuously comes up, and we do not disagree with it in any manner. We do not. However, we don't think it goes far enough, primarily because the problem is not something that should be taken care of over another decade now. This needs a solution now. But by that, what I mean is, we need to take care of this backlog right away. It is 1 million big, and it will only continue to grow. The country cap is a big problem. The country cap problem is that there are a certain number of people in the pipeline that I mentioned earlier who come on H-1B. However, when it comes to the green cards that are available, they're much smaller. It is only logical that if you take a large number of items into a pipeline and shove them into a smaller and smaller spigot, it's not going to come out. It is going to get backlogged.
Sure. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a minute, Ravi. I want to shift the conversation as the viewers here at home know. We brought together folks who are advocating, people who have been on the front lines as far as dealing with the government and now advocating, as well as practitioners such as Ms. Kalra, who is living this every day for her clients. And so, Ms. Kalra, I want to ask you if you can tell us what are some of the current trends and the gaps in the immigration law and the family-based categories, both for non-immigrant temporary visas as well as for green card applicants that you see in your practice, and what are some of the practical implications that these gaps are having on your clients and their families?
So the gaps, I mean, if you wanted to go into that, that would cover a variety of different non-immigrant and green card categories. But in the interest of time, just broadly speaking, some of them Ravi touched upon in his remarks, such as like you said, a huge backlog of green card immigrant visa numbers that are either capped because of the per country limits, or the ones that go unused every year. There are various reasons as to why they get unused. That's one thing we are seeing. Last year, because of the pandemic and the restrictions and the closure of US embassies and consulates worldwide, the processing all over the world of any kind of green card numbers, whether employment-based categories or family-based categories, they came to a screeching halt. So the backlog that has accrued as a result thereof continues to grow. I mean, the Department of State just actually this week has announced like what they call a tiered approach. They call it triage. You know what the word triage means. They're trying to triage a pretty, bad situation, and they have announced the different tiers as to how they are going to allocate or prioritize, I should say, the visa processing. Again, starting with intercountry adoptions to immediate relative of U.S. citizens, and then other kind of family-based matters, and last is the employment-based. So that's one thing that they're trying to address. Last year, so the fiscal year for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services ends on September 30th of every year. October 1st is the start of the new fiscal year. So on October 1st, 2021, the fiscal year 2022 will start. Last year, in September of 2020, before the start of the fiscal year of 2021, the Department of State, actually Charlie Oppenheim, anybody who deals with employment, immigration has heard that name. He's the chief of the Visa Control and Reporting Division of the Department of State. And as one of the commentators on his YouTube videos, which the Department of State comes out with, commented, he's the guy who holds the Excel spreadsheet as to who gets the visa. Last year, they allowed people who are in the United States, the ones that Ravi was talking about earlier, the ones who are here on H-1B or other kind of employment work visa categories. And if they had, if they were already in the green card process, which is a 3-step process, some of them were eligible to apply for adjustment of status, either with their current approved I-140s or by downgrading some of their I-140s. And that allowed them to file their applications, but their applications are still pending. They are still not adjudicated. And there is actually a court case going on right now where they are challenging the government as to why you are letting these numbers from that fiscal year go waste at the end of this year, which is September.
Those are unused visas, right?
The unused visa. So yes, some of them were able to file their applications, but they're not adjudicated, meaning they're still, pending with the USCIS. God knows when they will be adjudicated. I'll give you an example. We had in 2012 a window that had opened up where some H-1B people who were in the process, H-1B beneficiaries who were in the process of getting their green card were able to file for their adjustment of status way back in 2012. I'm talking about a small number of people. There was a small window that opened up for them to file. They are getting processed right now. But the people who were able to, again, a small number of people who were able to file last year, who knows when their cases are going to get processed. Yeah. So yes, their situation becomes a little bit better than others who were not able to file for their adjustment of status application last year, and were hopeful that this year they would make a similar announcement where they would allow those unused numbers that are not being used up outside, meaning at the US embassies and consulates, would allow them to use them here by filing their adjustment of status, which is a green card application here in the US. But that did not happen this year.
And those expire, right, at the end of the fiscal year?
They do. They go unused. So one of the things that was actually in that budget, a reconciliation bill, one of the things that was in there was allowing a recapture of all these unused numbers, starting from 1992 to up to 2020. There's more than 200,000 numbers. These are congressionally approved numbers. It's not like you have to go back to the Congress and ask them to approve. These are already approved. There's a finite number, 140,000 immigrant visas, green cards that are issued every fiscal year or are authorized, to be used every fiscal year for employment categories, and 230 something for family-based categories, but they're going to waste. Last year, the family-based categories numbers were going wasted because of, like I said, the pandemic-related closures. But this year, one of the things that they're saying, the Department of State is saying, is they're hoping that now that they're going to start processing at the consulates again, their focus is going to be on the family-based immigration. Fair enough. It makes sense because those people are hurting too. So it's like constantly trying to strike a balance between that. Yeah. The other thing we are seeing is the H4 EAD, which Ravi also touched upon. The H4 EAD, meaning H4 is the spouse of an H1B holder. Certain H4 spouses, not all, some of them whose spouses, H-1B spouses, are at a certain stage of their green card process can apply, may be eligible to apply for an employment authorization document. So what would happen is this was done under an executive order that was issued by President Obama way back in 2014. It was challenged, fortunately, just a few months ago, that H4 EAD challenge against, asking for it to be revoked finally has gone away. So, H4 people can breathe a sigh of relief, at least that sword is no longer hanging over their head. But what did happen was, again, I don't want to take a political side, nothing that I'm saying here is legal advice anyway, but just, my personal opinion. One of the things that happened last year, or I should say 2019 into 2020, was while this legal challenge, H4 EAD, was being fought in courts, the administration gave guidance to the USCIS adjudicators to delay processing of H4 EADs. And when I say delay, I'm talking about more than 1 year delay. So we had applications that were filed in April of 2020 or March of 2020, not even close to being adjudicated come April 2021. They were pending for more than a year. So the people who have the H4 spouses who now have had jobs based on their work authorization, which is the EAD employment authorization document, can no longer work. So why was that delayed that long? What they did was they started separating the H4 application of the spouse from his or her H-1B spouse's application or petition. So the H-1B approval could come in a 2-month or a 3-month period, but the H-4 and the EAD was going to be adjudicated separately.
And that's something that's new, right? That wasn't always done like that.
It wasn't. In fact, there was a time, and I've been doing this long enough to know, if the H-1B petition was filed as premium processing, right, which is an expedited service where you pay an additional fee, which right now the additional fee is $2,500 per application per case. The H-4 application of the spouse, dependent spouse, was processed along with his or her spouse's H-1B.
And that makes sense, right? Logically, right?
Logically, that would make sense, yes. Logically, EADs were approved or not approved, adjudicated and hopefully approved within 90 days. No longer the case. The previous administration said, no, USCIS does not have to do it. The new administration is trying to, go do away with some of those restrictive policies and guidelines. But right now, it's just the backlogs are just horrendous. I mean, that's what we are seeing. You asked the question was, what are the trends? Everything comes down back to the backlogs that just continue to balloon.
Sure, and that's amazing. Thank you for sharing your experiences, because you're dealing with families in real time and hearing their plight as someone who yourself has been through that system and is now trying to help. I would say not just the new generation, but now the next generation's children address these issues. And as for some of us who have been working on legislation, Murad, Ravi, and I, it's not just the consequences of bills, but sometimes it's the unintended consequences of legislation that you have to watch out for. And so what we've done here today with this panel and at HAF with our partners is trying to foresee some of those unintended consequences to avert them in the future. And that is why the proposals that we're pushing for now do just that. They don't just fix and remedy the system, but they also have foresight and can see what potential unintended consequences may lie in the language of these bills. And it's important to bring together the administrators as well as the practitioners to do just that. And so I want to turn it over back to Ravi real quick, and then Murad, I'm going to come to you. But Ravi, there was some questions about how long is the backlog now? How long is the green card backlog? And what will happen if the current green card backlog is not addressed now? You're on mute, Ravi. What happens to the best of us?
Sorry. So that is a tough question at this point. It is by no means any better than what it was last year. It's probably only slightly better, but it wouldn't matter. If it was
how many years are we talking?
Well, we're probably still talking about 150 years.
150. That's
150,
insane.
175. I don't know what it is. It is a very large number, humanly impossible number. That should suffice to very clearly show how broken this is and why it needs to be fixed ASAP.
And what would happen if this continues on this trend, if we don't do something about it now? What do we miss out as Americans, as the American economy tries to recover from COVID-19?
So this is what I really looked into when we did the campaign, when we actually did the engagement with the various legislators in 2020. We dug into companies, and our criteria were: are they a new company? It can be in whatever field. Are they a completely new company? And are they making at least $100 million or more, not in revenue, but as a market valuation? And do they have patents and so on and so forth? And in addition to that, we also looked at the general trend of patents from Chinese and Indian communities, because those were the two communities that are backlogged. We don't want to talk about one community alone, because the fundamental problem is this is a broken system. And so the loss at that level at this point is 22 billion per year, and at least 65,000 net new middle class or better jobs to America. And the reason middle class or better is important is because each job in that category indirectly adds another 2 to 4 jobs. And since 2015, I mean, if you take the last 16 years, we're talking about, since 2006, if you take the last 15 years, we're talking about a significant amount. We're talking about 15 times 20, that's about $250 to $300 million. But it has not been properly weighted, and the value of the dollar changes, inflation changes, and all these things have an impact on the valuation. So this is likely to be much higher. I'm being very conservative.
And that's billion, right? You said with a B?
Billions with a B.
Yes.
And these days, things are very changed, very different. These days, one of the big changes is the computing power. I mean, I come from a computer science background, having worked for massive cloud companies and such. The ability to significantly ramp up is much higher. I'm taking data from 1975 till 2006, and that's the data I'm talking about. But building a unicorn is much more easier than it was in 1980s. So we can't quite literally, I mean, the value is going to be much, much higher. I'm being extremely conservative.
Thank you, Ravi.
Right away.
Thank you, Ravi. Morad, I'm going to switch over to you because we've been working recently on the TFVA, which addresses some of the more urgent needs. Right, these are family moments, these are special moments, graduations, birth of a child, weddings, things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the arguments you're hearing against TFVA? What does it actually do? What are the arguments against it? And what are the solution? What's the solution that it provides in your opinion?
So, I mean, we haven't really had many arguments against it. It's a very practical solution to an existing problem that we sort of identified at the beginning of this panel. I think the biggest obstacle right now is priorities, that members of Congress have in the immigration sphere. But in general, we're getting good, positive reaction from members of Congress that we've discussed the bill with. It's just waiting out some of those priorities, seeing some of those issues sort of clear the deck. We're hopeful for the reconciliation process to hammer out some of those priorities. Hopefully it will get back in there. But I think the priorities has been the major obstacle. In terms of what the bill does, it addresses three main concerns that consular officers usually have in denying non-immigrant visas to people, particularly people that had relatives in the United States. One is intent to immigrate, two is overstays, and three is, would this person become a sort of public burden on the American economic system? So we try to address these three issues in the bill itself.
And it's a short bill, right? I mean, we're not talking about a 1,000-page bill. This is a simple solution for a big problem.
Yeah, it's a very short bill. You know, in terms of addressing those issues, you know, on the public burden side, the first requirement is for the family relatives in the United States to file an affidavit of support for their relatives to come and visit them. This will ensure, if need be, that the cost of the trip will be taken care of. Already exists within the immigration system, and already there is a form that already exists for non-immigrants, but this just makes it mandatory. The second requirement would be for the applicant or the family member to purchase travel insurance for the relative coming to visit the United States. This will help in terms of emergency medical costs. If they break your leg, you go to the emergency room, part of the cost will be taken care of. And we don't have this within the American INA, but it is used commonly in other countries, like the Schengen visa for the EU requires it. It's based off of that, basically.
Got it.
And then there are some restrictions within the bill that would address overstays and sort of the intent to immigrate. The first one, it limits the visa to 90 days. So you have a timeline of when you could come and visit the United States for the special occasions. The second is you can't use this visa to come to the United States and then try to change your status. So it eliminates that pathway. Which we see a lot of people with B2, they come and overstay with the hope of eventually changing their status. And then the third provision is for relatives that petition on their family members abroad. If they had someone use this visa, come into the United States and overstay, those citizens, US citizen, legal permanent residents won't be able to use this visa anymore for other relatives. So there's sort of an enforcement clause within it to make sure that, you know, this is being used for its intended purposes.
Sure.
So
and these are the safeguards, right? I mean, these are the safeguards that we've built in. You know, we talked earlier about unintended consequences that we've seen manifest over the last 30 years. And TFVA, you know, sees that in real time. And we've built in these safeguards in that bill because I think, you know, we don't want new immigrants to the US to come with the stigma, or at least the perception of a stigma that members of Congress may have when it comes to immigration. And so we try to address that in advance by being proactive and putting that in there. And I think that's really important. Has that helped, you think, some of the perceptions on Capitol Hill when it comes to immigration, particularly on the TFVA?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if you look at it, you know, there has been some criticism where it doesn't go far enough for some conservative members, that, you know, there's a perception that everyone that visits the United States wants to overstay and never leave, which is not true. You know, people just want to come and visit their family members, right? So, you know, there is that sort of misperception that already exists. I think for a lot of congressional offices, you know, they look at the measures in the bill and they say, "Wow, this is practical. This makes sense." I think that's the vast majority of feedback we've gotten from congressional members and staff. The other thing that which is pretty useful for a lot of communities is people that are actually in the waiting process, those who want to get a green card and waiting a long period of time. This bill will actually allow them to apply to come and visit relatives while they're waiting on their application to be adjudicated. So those people that, currently under the B2 system, if you have a pending immigrant visa, you cannot come and visit. You're just barred from it. This allows opportunity for those relatives to come and visit their family in the United States. And there's actually a clause within the bill that says so.
That's awesome.
It's really, and then having that you can't change your status using this is really the way that it could have people to come and visit while they're waiting for their green card applications to be adjudicated.
Absolutely, and those people help contribute to our economy. They help bring jobs for employers here in the United States. And it's really a win-win, which is why I think you've seen a bipartisan push for this, something that we've been working on for quite some time. Ms. Collar, I want to go back to you. One of the questions we saw in the chat from Jasmeet Kaur has to do with the spouses who are dependent on H-1B visa holders. In the case of being divorced in the US or facing abuse, is that something you've dealt with? And could you talk a little bit about what the challenges are for those spouses? Because we talk a lot about the visa holders, but we're also families too. And we want to talk about the impact that it has on spouses. And maybe you can share some of the experiences you've had with your clients.
So speaking of H4, and you mentioned it earlier too, I'll date myself. I myself was an H4 spouse who came to the US on an H4 visa in 1992. At that time, you could not apply for an EAD, none of those. But I was also fortunate enough that I was able to get my green card shortly thereafter. In those days, we were not stuck in those, decades-long, horrendous waiting periods. Now, coming back to H4 spouses who are, so H4 is a dependent visa status. It really depends on that person's relationship to the H-1B principal beneficiary, principal visa holder. So an H4 is either for a spouse of an H-1B or for a child under the age of 21 of an H-1B visa holder. Most H-4 spouses are, like their H-1B beneficiary spouses, not able to get their green card for such a long time because of, like we've been talking about, the backlogs. And marriages, as we all know, are difficult. Sometimes marriages don't work out. There are issues. Sometimes there's abuse, domestic violence. Sometimes there's other issues. And sometimes the marriage has broken irrevocably, as they say. I'm not a family lawyer, but I believe that's irrevocable breakdown of marriage or whatever. And sometimes the H-1B visa holder beneficiary spouse uses that against their H-4 spouse to, almost as like a kind of a blackmail. Don't want to use that word, but it's leverage. Something they use against them.
Leverage.
That, beg your pardon?
Leverage.
Yes, that's all right. Leverage. So that can lead to the person being, having forced to continue in a marriage that they want out of, because they know that once the divorce is final, they no longer will be able to get their H-4 status. And many of these H-4 spouses have young children who were born in the US, and they are US citizens by birth. And that is also used as leverage against them, that if you lose your H-4 status because of now the divorce, you will be forced to go back to your home country. A lot of them are from India, so let's say India. I'm not going to get into this, the social issues that come with the divorce and other things. That's not the scope of this discussion. But for them, unfortunately, the way our current immigration laws are, there is no recourse for them. There is no way out for them. So if they want to stay in the US and their only option is an H-4, then they are stuck, quote unquote, right? The other way for them to do is they can change their status to go and apply for something like an F1 student status, or themselves, if they're qualified, to apply for an H-1B, but then the H-1, so that they can live and work in the US on an H-1B status. But as we all know, H-1Bs are subject to lotteries. Those lotteries are, we have way more applicants than the actual number of H-1B visas available every year. So it has its own set of issues. And a lot of them, and I think I saw briefly the remarks as I was reading them. I don't have that in front of me right now, but in situations where there is abuse, H-1B and H-4 spouses, and their marriage has had instances of abuse or battered spouse or whatever, they want to apply for a U visa or try to apply for a green card under the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA. But their abuse sometimes is not documented, and they may not be able to avail of the immigration relief under U visa or under VAWA. And also, those are also capped. There's an annual cap on U visas. Right now, they're processing U visas from 2014 or 16, actually, I think. They're processing those cases. So again, they're stuck. So right now, the way the laws are, there is unfortunately no other provision for H-4 spouses to remain and live and work in the US, because even if they have an EAD, once the marriage is terminated, the H-4 status is gone, so is their EAD. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So there should be some measures taken, or whatever immigration reform we are looking at, and we hope that passes should, I believe, contain some provisions to for the H-4 people as well.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Collier. And I see some of the folks in our chat have those experiences or are having those experiences right now. And it's something that we are working to address. We put in the action alert into the chat for the TFVA, and I hope all of you listening and watching at home go into our chat, click on the past TFVA action alert, because that's an important bill. We actually had an action alert ready to go on the budget reconciliation bill, but as Ms. Kalra said, late Sunday night, early Monday morning, we got news from the Senate parliamentarian that the inclusion of the green card backlog and the Dreamers bill and the Children's of Dreamers bill would not be permitted to be included in the Senate budget reconciliation bill. So we weren't able to launch that action alert in anticipation for this week and anticipation for our advocacy conference, because that ruling had just come out. And Congress, as those of you who have been following, had every intention to pass that budget reconciliation bill with the green card reform backlog clearance language, the Eagle Act, as Ravi said, as well as the Dreamers and Children's of Dreamers legislation. But that is now kind of off the table, or is off the table, as according to the Senate parliamentarian. So what's next? And I kind of want to ask everyone on this panel to give me to look into your crystal ball, if you will, and tell me what you think is going to happen next, what you would like to see happen next in Congress. They're going to be in session all this week and next week through the end of the month, before they go on a little bit of a break in the beginning of October. And we know there's going to be a CR, a congressional continuing resolution on the budget for fiscal year 2022 to the end of this year. So Congress is kicking the can down the road, if you will, on the budget. But what do you think is going to happen next, and what would you like to see happen now that the Senate has come up with this ruling, and what's the path forward at this point that you see at this time? So I'm going to start with Ravi, and then go to Morad, and then end with Akanksha.
It was quite the bummer that what happened with the reconciliation bill. What we're primarily looking at doing is, given what things were over the past few years, this situation needs to change immediately. And so what we're continuing to reach out for is to eliminate the backlog ASAP. And we're not precisely specifying one provision or the other, but we're definitely reaching out to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee on the House and the Senate, and to various other senators and congresspersons to take a fresh look at this. The way things are, and based on how broken it is, a solution should not end up being a bone of contention. I think there are multiple facets that are coming up, which actually always points to something deeper being the problem. And if we do not recognize that, we're going to have another Band-Aid. H4EAD was supposed to be very helpful, but in turn, what happened was it ended up being a sword. I'll borrow Akankshaji's phrase, that hung over many people's careers, many spouses, especially women's path forward. In fact, in some industries, I know for a fact that if you have an H4EAD, you do not need to apply. And that applies for in the medical profession, absolutely. Irrespective of the fact that you have the best credentials, you do not need to apply if you're on an H4EAD. So we should not look at Band-Aids. I think the current dispensation, the current administration, and the Congress both have their sights set in the right direction. This needs to be taken care of now. And the sooner the backlog is eliminated, the better it is to come up with a forward-looking, visionary implementation, promulgation of immigration law for the 21st century. We are already 2 decades late into the century. We had better get going right now.
Agreed. Morad, what would you like to see? What's your take on the Senate's ruling and what we can do next?
So yeah, I mean, it was sort of a disappointment. We were looking forward for that to go through because, as we discussed before, there's a number of priorities for members of Congress that were going to be part of that reconciliation, and it would have cleared the deck and allowed our sponsors to move forward with the TFVA. It's a new idea, so it still needs to be sort of better socialized in Congress. One of the things that Senator Rand Paul encountered when talking to members of the Senate Judiciary Committee was that, what's the problem? Why do we need this? Don't we have other issues on the border that are in crisis?
So they didn't even know about this problem, right?
Yeah. So the socialization still needs to happen within Congress and with members of Congress. And that's why, having those action alerts, really important for constituents to contact their members to let them know about the legislation. And just, trying to get as many co-sponsors as possible. Right now in the House, we're at 24 bipartisan list, almost split between Democrats and Republicans. And we're looking to add more co-sponsors. That's where it becomes very important. And eventually, as we gain more co-sponsors, we could start discussions with the Judiciary Committee. One of the things that our House sponsor wants to do is have a hearing on this. So it goes through the committee process, and hopefully, this time next year, that would have occurred, and we could go through the discussions with the Judiciary Committee about, whether it should be marked up or it should be attached to a broader bill. But we're getting there. So these discussions are starting to happen. We had a very good talk with the Democratic counsels on the Judiciary Committee. I think generally they're supportive of it. Obviously, they're working on other priorities right now. But once, as we gain more co-sponsors, as we socialize this and bring awareness to it to more members of Congress, then the path forward sort of sets itself.
Sure, and I think you hit the nail on the head as far as the socialization and the fact that members of Congress had come back to you and saying, well, what is this about? Is this even a problem? Really shows the level of education that we as activists and pro-American immigration advocates need to engage in. And that's part of our discussion here today. That's why we're all here today, is to educate folks who are talking about this issue, who are listening to this issue, and to activate them into taking action and writing to your member of Congress on this issue, and be a part of that socialization process. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors when you take action. You can share that alert with your friends and family. You can share it on social media. We're talking about socialization. What's the best way to do that? Put it on social media, put it on your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, and really get it out there, and tag your members of Congress so that they too see the importance of this legislation and what we are trying to do. So that's what we try to do at HAF, and that's what our partners at PAIA and Immigration Forum try to do, is to educate and to activate. So I'm really happy to get your remarks on that, Murad. Ms. Kalra, I would like to hit your crystal ball. You had shared the news story with me right away. I had just seen it the night before. In fact, I was texting with Congressman Krishnamoorthi's chief of staff and staff assistant when the news story broke, and it was sort of like a punch in the gut when we got that news, because it's sort of like we're back to the drawing board. Even Ravi and I, we were working on this on the green card bill last Congress, and some of the assurances that we received from House and Senate Democrats were, wait until next year, we're going to be in the majority, we're going to get this done. So even if we didn't able to get it done in 2020, we'll be able to do it next year. And Ravi and I were saying, well, we have a chance now to do this. Let's not let this opportunity slip through our fingers. We can get it done next year. That's great. You can make those other fixes, but let's get this done now. That didn't happen. And now we have this ruling from the Senate parliamentarian. So I'd like to get your thoughts. How, what was that? What was your response when you got that news on Sunday? What do you think the next step is for Congress? If you can look into your crystal ball and maybe give us a little bit of what you'd like to see.
Well, first of all, if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be sitting here. But then again, we are in the la-la land of immigration. What is promised, what we see, what's in the regulations, what is in the statute is very different what is practically done. As far as this, budget reconciliation bill and a lot of people's hopes that were riding on it, as you can imagine, all of last week, I was flooded with emails from clients who thought this is a done deal. It's going to, pass, and it's going to give them the much awaited good news that they've been holding, with bated breath, waiting for. And I'm an optimist by nature, but then again, I practice immigration, so kind of negates that. One of my favorite things that I say to my clients is sometimes there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. What looks good, as a bill, sometimes it's too good to be true. That was my initial take when I first read it, without even going into details. And then I'll be honest, I read more about it after the news came out that it's a no-go. My personal take on it is, and maybe I will get into trouble with some of people, my attorney, my colleagues, or whatever it is, they were putting too much in this, just way too much. You're putting every issue that is related to immigration right smack in this these proposals that they've included in the budget reconciliation bill. My personal take on this is, if you ask me, and again, because a lot of my practice is employment and family immigration, is keep them separate, or try to at least address them differently. And it's not that I'm being an Indian American and speaking at a Hindu American forum. Let's say we talk about India. Not everybody who comes from India is only coming under the family or the employment-based category. There are people from India who have overstayed their visas, who are now out of status, who have entered unlawfully. They are EV, entered without inspection. So there are large number of Indians here who have come who are undocumented, whether because they have lost their status or whether because they entered illegally. So yes, as an Indian American and especially as an immigration attorney, I think they should definitely address those too. And I also have non-Indian clients who are in the removal process or asylum process or whatever. So I'm not saying don't address that. What I'm saying is putting everything in the same bill was asking for too much. But then again, of course, it was disappointing yesterday when the news, all of the details came out. But then again, what my understanding is the Democrats are saying we have a plan B. What their plan B is, I don't know. I would like to see what it is and if that is going to go through. But again, being an immigration attorney, I have to, much as I would like to be optimistic about it, I don't think it's going to go in the budgetary.
Well, thank you for. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I can sense the frustration. You're a practitioner. You deal with this on a daily basis. We're coming up on our deadline, and I want to ask one last question. We touched on it briefly, but not directly. And I know, Ms. Kalra, you deal with this. What about the children of dreamers, those who are aging out, the impact it has on their families? And what have you seen and what do you recommend? I know there's the Dreamers Bill, there's the American Children's Act now, that's pending. We already talked about the Eagle Act on green card reform, and we're going to be pushing all of that. So please visit our advocacy center, hinduamerican.org/take-action in the coming days. But please talk a little bit about Dreamers and the children of those Dreamers and what we can do for them and what they face currently in our current system.
So yeah, we do have our hopes pinned on that, because from what we have seen in the last many years is when it comes to let's talk about DACA, let's say, right? Even in spite of all of the political extremes that people debate are on when it comes to immigration, when it comes to Dreamers, when it comes to children or people who were brought here as children and are either undocumented or have lost their status or are at the risk of losing their status, people are a bit more willing to have some kind of a bipartisan relief available for them. So let's hope, keep our fingers crossed that comes through for people who are going to, or children who are going to age out. There is something called the CSPA, Child Status Protection Act, that does allow you to preserve your status as a child, but then of course there's a formula that's used for it and you have to be eligible. It's not, CSPA doesn't apply to everybody. So yes, we hope that there will be something coming approved or passed by the Congress that will bring relief to people who are going to age out and may not be eligible under the CSPA provisions. What that will be and when that will happen, I do not know. But we do hope that that'll come through.
Sure. Ravi, we'll let you talk a little bit about Dreamers, and then Morad as well, and we can have your remarks, closing remarks thereafter.
I agree with what Akankshaji just mentioned. It is a bit of a travesty that a section of the Dreamers are included in the section or not. We've been working again to ensure that children basically who are going to age out in case their parents' green card application has taken a while to be adjudicated, a while as in a few decades. We've been working with various members on the Judiciary Committee and also on both sides, the Senate and the House, to get them included and protect their status and freeze their age as of when the application was made, as opposed to for them having to wait forever or go back into the H1 line. And through this, I also learned that there are other categories, not just the H1. There is the, which also we're working with a few other organizations to make sure that they're included. These might be the E1 category and the TPS category and so on and so forth. Primarily though, if we boil this down to the principle, it is very important that children, irrespective of what bucket you put them in, which they should not belong in any bucket, they should always be taken care of. They're the future of this country. And it is important that they're not put through the same troubles and they're not made to jump through the same hoops over and over again that their parents had to go through.
Thank you, Ravi. Murad, anything you'd like to leave us with as we wrap up our second panel?
No, I mean, just thank you all for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about the TFVA. I couldn't agree more with the two other panelists on the Dreamers. You know, it's a tough issue. You know, it has a lot of bipartisan support, and it's just time for Congress to take care of that issue. And then, you know, thank you guys for helping us advocate for the TFVA. Really important for your members to take action and share it on social media, as you said, and look forward to working with you all in, you know, educating the members of Congress and the broader American public about the bill, and then, you know, seeing it go through the legislative process. We're excited about that.
Sure. Thank you so much, Murad. And Ms. Kalra, any last words?
Oh boy, last words. All right, well, let's talk about immigrants and the promise, enthusiasm, and energy that they bring, how they uplift our community. Statistics back that up. But then look at the immigration situation that they find themselves in. It limits their growth potential due to long waits, due to quotas, due to caps, due to other things, due to the constant, you know, living this constantly. Can you imagine what it is like to have to live through this day in, day out? I do it vicariously through my clients. But I can tell you, it takes a toll emotionally, mentally, you know, fiscally. It takes a toll in every which way. And the majority of the people who come here, who come to the US, let's again talk about, you know, the ones who are coming as students, because there's a large number. Imagine the number, or not imagine, it's actually, there's data out there. Students who come here on F-funds, mainly from India and China, contribute billions, again with a B, billions of dollars to the US economy, right? Majority of them who are coming on or F1 are then staying here for to work on H-1Bs, or some that are coming on L1s. They are the ones who are stuck in the long, decades-long green card process. They're highly educated individuals, hardworking, qualified. They're looking to improve their own quality of life, raise their families, and many, many others have done exactly that when they came to the US generations ago and were able to do it. But that is not available to many who are now stuck in these in the you know, the immigration debacle is what I will call it. The need for immigration reform is urgent. I've been hearing the word broken immigration system for decades myself, because I have been doing this for now 22 years, right? The word broken doesn't really even begin to convey what it's just a matter of whatever, however they describe it. But
I think you're right. I think we need to change the terminology. Maybe we call it a failed immigration system.
Yes, I think I like
and maybe that'll up the ante, right? I mean, we're always looking for new ways to characterize some of this stuff, and maybe we need to change the terminology, because it sounds like, oh, if something's broken, you can fix it tomorrow, but this isn't something that can just be fixed tomorrow. It's going to take a lot of time and effort, and as some of the members said, it's very stressful and frustrating, but you have to keep at it, right? You have to keep moving forward. You have to keep pushing. That's what advocacy is all about: persistence, keeping at it.
Yes, absolutely. And I commend the other panelists for doing the work that they do. Both Murad and Ravi, continue to do what you're doing, because you're the guys out there actively, you know, talking to your legislators, congresspeople, whoever, and of course HF. Continue doing the work that you do, and so that my clients, people that I represent, my community members, they can, you know, benefit from the work that you guys are doing. So continue to do that. We are starting to see changes bit by bit, hopefully positive. But again, what we would like to see is, actually, there's something like a watchdog called GAO, Government accountability and
Yeah.
something office that came out with a report just last month, and they've talked a lot about USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and they, that's one thing that if I had to pick one that I would like to see immediately, I would pick allow the recapture of unused green cards. I think that's an easy fix, is what I say.
Yeah.
But let's say if I could pick one more immediate one, because that's going to need something more definitive. The one I would like to see right now is USCIS get its act together. I mean, it's really horrendous how we're having to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. Start issuing appointments on InfoPass again. Get more trained people to do what they are supposed to do. Give the USCIS adjudication officers more discretion so they can look at the merits of a case and not just reject the entire package based on a typographical error or leaving the form unfilled or blank or writing NA. I mean, I could go on and on, but yeah, some of those fixes we would like to see hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you all. And I really, really commend the work that you've done over the years, the work that you are doing now. I want our audience to know that we here at HAF are working very, very hard to pass this bill to educate more Americans and educate members of Congress on all of the aspects, whether it's dreamers and their children, whether it's the green card backlog that most of our members have had horrible experiences with, as well as finding those new avenues and ways that we can bring some relief and families together, such as TFVA, in this time of COVID-19, as we, as Americans and our economy tries to get back to where we were, our economic engine roaring again. It makes the most sense to fix our broken immigration system or the failed immigration system, put American immigration policy back on the right track, boost our economy, bring people together, help America and the next generation to succeed and to thrive in their entrepreneurial spirit that all of us around the world want to be a part of when they come to America and the land of opportunity. And so thank you all to our panelists, Ms. Kalra, Mr. Gorban, Mr. Bulusu. It's been a really great discussion with you today. And thank you again for your activism, for your advocacy, for educating us. And please, for those of you that are listening, take action. Visit HinduAmerican.org, go to our advocacy center. We're going to have more alerts coming up in the next few days as we get through our 2021 virtual advocacy forum. Thank you all so much. I'm Tanyel Kushakjian. Have a good afternoon and join us at 4 o'clock for our final program of the day, our fireside chat with an Afghan American scholar. I've actually seen a lot of panels and discussions about Afghanistan in Washington, D.C. lately, and very few of them actually have an Afghani on the panel. But we do here at HAF, we think it's important to empower those voices that we talk about and give them a platform to talk about their issues themselves and the experiences that they have, not just a bunch of analysts in DC talking about what's going on over there, but empowering Afghans and Afghan women to talk about their experiences and what they would like to see done. So that's coming up at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Thank you again to our panel and to our audience for your attention. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
You.
Bye.